Hello again, everyone. This time we're going to the Flash Museum, breaking in quite haphazardly, running on the cosmic treadmill, and we're going to take a trip through time. And along the way, I've managed to capture one of the Flash's most deadly rogues, the undefeatable talking JSA Mo. How are you, you fiendish devil, you?
You've got me like for the final time. Uh, people like you need to know that you actually like lock me up in a basement, and every like 2 weeks or so come down and be like, you have to do like a couple episodes, or else like I'll kill your entire family.
Well, it's because you're living in a fucking dream world, Mo. You need to wake
Yeah,
up and realize that you're in my basement forever.
well, like I don't mind. It's like he gives me biscuits and stuff, and talks to me and sings me lullabies in his beautiful accent. That's weird. But yeah, I'm glad to be here again. Sorry for that, like super uncomfortable.
Well, it's good because we're about to be talking about an uncomfortable time period. For anyone who's kind of in the aware of comic book history, superheroes really kind of kicked off in the late 1930s, early 1940s, with Superman, and then followed by Batman, and then the trend that's set, not just among DC Comics, but then among Marvel Comics, which at the time I believe was called Timely Comics. Or Atlas. I know one of them was called Atlas and one of them was called Timely, I think. But yeah,
Marvel was Timely, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So that kind of we kind of got the boom in that time period. But yet we rarely see superhero stories still take place in that time period, in that Great Depression era. Like pre-war sentiment superheroes, even though that's where a lot of these characters were born. And me and Mo are just going to kind of discuss the question of, do you think there is still a place for Superman in the 1930s, specifically as a story to be told either in a comic series again, like Batman 66, or just in more film adaptations? Like, must superheroes always be made in the time period they're being the film's being made in?
Yeah, that's a conundrum, because you have two sides of that. The Golden Age, like if you go back and read a Golden Age comic, you have two things that you notice. The characters are very different. They act different. They have like different. A lot of them have different kind of views and methods. Like Batman, like he was an absolutely insane serial killer. But at the same time, you notice a difference in like tone and speech. Superheroes in the Golden Age did not feel like real people, and that was a problem. That whenever you go back and read a comic, the dialogue feels weird. And I don't know if this was because it was the time, but I'm sure that people kind of were a bit more normal than that. So when you present the idea of kind of going back to that Golden Age, you have, okay, Superman. Is Superman gonna be modern, idealistic Superman, or is he gonna be truth, justice, and the American way Superman? Because the American way back then is different from the American way now, and you have like all these different kind of timely problems, like Batman killing. Should Batman kill? Shouldn't he kill? Should he wear purple gloves? Shouldn't he wear purple gloves? And you kind of have to get around those two problems first.
Mm-hmm. It's one of those things where a lot of it is not even nostalgia, because none of us here have grown up on those comics, but there is always a kind of fascination with older time periods and like a sense of, okay, well, if we're going to look at it when this character was made, how would Batman operate in that setting? But would he still have the technology he has today and just be incredibly advanced, or would we see a more stripped down kind of urban Batman? Which could be an interesting story to see, a Batman who has to operate in that time period technological constraints. That could be fun. It also kind of adds to you always get a feel for things when they're in older time periods. they always have a timeless quality because that people can look at it objectively, and they don't have to aspire to trends that are currently happening. You can look at what happened before, what happened since, and if you make it in there, and you don't even have to say what specific year it is. If you just make it vague, where it can be in the 30s or maybe in the 50s, maybe the 80s, like the Tim Burton Batman movie, Batman and Batman Returns, were very good at keeping that timeless quality of the aesthetic of Gotham City. Like, they had elements from all over the place. And I feel like more of that could be really nice in superhero movies and cartoons. I feel like the Batman animated series had a really, really strong look. I would have liked if the Superman animated series copied that a little bit more, because Metropolis in that cartoon felt a little bare. And I feel like the Metropolis Superman should be bought from should either be this like over the top gleaming city of tomorrow, or it should be this kind of urban industrial like steam workers city, like the city of the working class, where 1930s depression era Superman comes out barrel chested and he's beating up wife beaters and he's keeping people safe. Like that, I feel like that stuff, because it's never. Superman was created by two poor Jewish kids to basically give the poor working class someone who could fight back against corruption. There's a reason why, to this day, Superman's biggest enemy is a businessman. He's against capitalism. He's against the 1%. Superman is for the people. And I feel like as we keep going further in time, that message just gets more and more and more and more relevant. I think a lot of people could do with that kind of swashbuckling. Even New 52 initially tried to capture this with Superman at the start, where he was just in the t-shirt and jeans and he was beating up politicians and he wasn't taking shit from the cops, and he kind of had a harder edge around him, but he was still Superman, but he was a Superman from that time period. He wouldn't take anyone's shit. And I kind of like that. I like that. I like that spirit. I like that gumption. It's like it's the working class man's like fire to fight back against authority, and that I think is extremely relevant. In terms of other heroes, though, aside from Superman and Batman, Mo, I'm going to ask you this because obviously they're one of the things you're most known for, but the JSA in general, there have been attempts to modernize the JSA and to have them be in a modern setting, and a lot of them have been met with mixed responses, to say the least. Do you feel like those characters specifically are always going to be from this kind of time period, or do you think they should be modernized and be current like Superman and Batman are now, where every reboot they are whatever the modern era is?
Yeah, I think we once touched up on it, but the JSA, they don't work in a modern setting, not in modern times, but in a modern setting, because that's the Justice League. That's the Justice League exactly, and you have everything that the JSA can do now, the Justice League can do, maybe even better, and that's a problem, because you can just replace everyone with a JLA member. But back then, the JSA could do stuff that other people couldn't, because at the time, Superman and Batman were created before the Justice Society, but they weren't the ones in a superhero team fighting the war and stuff like that. They were doing like their own thing. So that those characters can grow and be modernized without being tied to a specific thing or a specific time. But say like Captain America, the JSA are very much a child or a creation of that era, a reflection of that wartime era, and that was like their entire theme. And the JSA characters themselves, they individually could work in modern time, or kind of go through the years without that weight holding them down. Like Dr. Fate and Hawkman and the Spectre, they've done completely fine on their own in modern settings and modern stories and tone. But when you put them all together, it just doesn't work. And that's why Jeff Johns had to modernize them by introducing completely new characters and presenting new ideas. But I think that they should just be kept tied to that idea or that time, like Captain America. But on the other hand, Captain America was expertly modernized to have that timely feel, but he became kind of an independent thing where he keeps the ideas or ideals of that time and goes through them now. And Superman, I think Superman, I never bought that he was entirely modernized, that he was a completely new character. Superman has always been Superman, even if he kind of changes a bit. If you take Superman from the 50s and put him now, it could still work fine because his ideals again never change. They just kind of get with the time. Like back then he was against like the war and stuff. Now he's against discrimination and like racism and all that. He works as an evolving character, and people always say like comics shouldn't be political. Comics have always been political. Politics are literally the themes of certain characters, and as those characters expand, they reflect the change of politics over time. The JSA at the time were very much about World War II. Now there's not much that they could be about. So we have to keep that World War II element to them.
Mhm.
Batman was never a political character. He was completely secluded from that world, and that's why Batman works as a timeless character, as he said. And like especially Batman the animated, you can place which year Batman the animated series is based in. You could say it's from like the 1960s or 70s, or you could say it's from the future. Nobody would argue with you because Batman works as kind of a symbolic character, while Superman has to be very much tied to real world issues and stuff like that. Similar to Green Arrow, for example, whose extreme liberalism has literally been the same since like the 70s.
I think that's really well put. I guess I'll ask you this question: are there any characters who have been created in the modern era that you would have liked to see someone do a version of in an older era? The biggest example is the Batman 66 comic has done a version of what would Harley Quinn have been like in that universe, or like what would Two-Face have been like in that universe, and they said, well, Two-Face would have been played by William Shatner. I kind of adore that. But like,
Yeah.
do you feel like there are any modern characters that you would have liked to see in like the 1930s time period?
Well, first, I think that's a great idea. Like the actual like Batman 66 comic, it's genius because you can take a lot of characters and introduce them in different time periods and do stuff like that, especially if they were created before that time period. I've always been very supportive of period piece superhero movies. I don't know why they keep putting them in the 90s because it's like the most normal and bland time period ever. But stuff like putting Superman in the 60s, Green Arrow in the 70s, I would kill to see those movies because we haven't seen those movies. And even though we have seen the characters in that time, we don't need the character to be in modern day because the comics are in modern day. He was back then as well. Like, you can have Green Arrow taking on Malcolm, or well, they do call him Malcolm Merlin now. You can just call him Merlin. You can have Green Arrow taking on Merlin now in 2019, or you could have Green Arrow taking on Merlin in 1973. And you can pull up a panel from a comic from that time, a panel from a comic from now, and it wouldn't make a difference. It would be a different comic, but he still works in that kind of frame. So I would take a character that hasn't existed in a certain time period and put them in it. We've seen Green Lantern in old times as Alan Scott. Of course, Wonder Woman, Superman, Batman, Green Arrow, JSA, even Flash. Like, and Flash was just absolutely insane. Like one of the golden age Flash comics, Jay Garrick was force feeding an entire turkey to a criminal, and I have no idea why.
Because crime doesn't pay, Mo. But yeah,
He was hardcore.
I kind of agree. It's just one of those things where it's an interesting idea, and it's hard to think off the top of your head. But there's definitely characters you can easily like picture and then say, well, that person would be really really cool back then. Like I like to imagine like Dick Sprang drawing Damian Wayne, and would have been a fun adventure. That kind of style for like other characters, like modern Blue Beetle with like the Scarab in the 60s would have been great. That kind of like that, because those kind of themes going together, like what would a 1930s Teen Titans look like, stuff like that is really interesting to me. But yeah, thank you for joining me for this, because it's something that isn't touched on a lot, but I feel like has so much growth and like interest you can get into, especially if you get like, now that we've gone past those, you can get into like real historical issues. Like Marvel's currently doing a story called Spider-Man Life Story, which is going about what if Peter Parker actually was from the 60s and then aged to now, and then it's going through like all the political events of those eras and how would Peter Parker deal with them. Like the first issues about him worried if he's going to be drafted into Vietnam. Like that's interesting.
Yeah.
I think stuff like that for other characters would be really good. Like there's this really great issue of Adventures of Superman where it starts with Superman in the 1930s, and then it continues until the end of the universe, and that Superman's there forever, and he's the same guy. He doesn't age. He's just Superman, and he loses Lois because she dies of old age in like in the 70s or something. But like he just continues to be Superman until the literal heat death of the universe, and then onwards. It's fantastic. I love it so much. It's Adventures of Superman 25. Everyone read it. It's one of the best comics ever written. But yeah,
I'm going to do it right now.
stuff like that is really great. And I feel there's a lot of potential for it, especially because comic books are timeless, and because they are, why not play with that? But yeah,
Yeah,
so
actually, speaking of Marvel, I would, I'm sorry, I would take modern, or not even modern, because Marvel, most of the characters were created in the 60s, so I would take any Marvel character and put him in the golden age, because like back then they only had like maybe Captain America. I would love to see Spider-Man in the 30s or 40s,
that'd be
kind
crazy.
of like Spider. Yeah, can you imagine Spider-Man? Maybe he just got his powers, like he can't be drafted into the military, but he still wants to kind of join the war somehow or save people. Like that'd be really interesting. Maybe Iron Man being like really technologically behind, but still doing something with whatever was available back then.
But we kind
Yeah.
of did get that with Spider-Man Noir.
Oh yeah, definitely. But I think I'd love to see like the entire Marvel universe if it had been created 20 years prior.
That would be interesting. And if anyone else would like to see something like that, please write in the comments, and we'll be able to talk more about specific characters that we might maybe turn into a series about. What would we do with this character in this time period? A lot of potential for it. But yeah, thanks for joining me with this, Mo. It's been a real pleasure. It always is with you, you rascal. We're gonna put you in the basement now. But before I throw away the key, anything to say before we close up?
Thanks a lot for having me, man. I really do enjoy coming on and rambling on about comic books, and yeah, it's a pleasure.
So again, to everyone listening, thank you for listening. I hope you have a good day. Hope you have a good evening. But most of all, take it easy and read good comics.